Beneath the jungles of the northern Philippines lies Yamashita's gold, a legendary World War II treasure worth potentially hundreds of billions of dollars. For most people, it is just a myth. But in 1970, a humble locksmith named Roger Roxas proved the legend was real. What he found made him fabulously wealthy for exactly one night, before plunging him into a battle against one of the 20th century's most ruthless dictators. This is a story where one man's greatest triumph became his greatest curse, and where finding the treasure was only the beginning of the nightmare. The Golden Lily. December 7th, 1941. Japanese forces did not just attack Pearl Harbor that day, they unleashed a coordinated assault across the entire Pacific Rim. Within months, the rising sun flag flew over territories stretching from Burma to the Philippines, from Indonesia to Malaysia. But conquest was not enough. Behind the front lines, a secret organization operated with surgical precision. They called it the Golden Lily, and its mission was breathtakingly simple: to steal everything of value from every conquered nation. This was not ordinary wartime looting. The Golden Lily was a meticulously organized operation, allegedly overseen by Prince Chichibu, Emperor Hirohito's own brother. Educated at Oxford, the prince brought methodical intelligence to systematic plunder. His teams did not just raid banks, they targeted museums, temples, private collections, even criminal organizations. They documented every item, catalogued every treasure, and stripped entire nations down to nothing. Think about the scale for a moment. Across a dozen countries, over 4 years, the Golden Lily seized gold reserves, religious artifacts, precious gems, artwork, and currency. They melted gold into uniform bars, obscuring their origins. Those distinctive stamps on each ingot read, "Made in Japan," a final insult suggesting the wealth had always belonged to the empire. The operation worked brilliantly at first. Ships regularly transported the plunder from the Philippines, strategically positioned at the empire's center, back to the Japanese homeland. Then, everything changed. In June 1942, the Battle of Midway changed everything. In 4 catastrophic days, American forces destroyed Japan's naval superiority. Suddenly, those treasure ships became floating coffins, easy targets for Allied submarines and aircraft. The sea routes were cut. Japan faced a crisis. They possessed unimaginable wealth, but could not transport it home. The solution was simple: hide it until victory came. And the man chosen to orchestrate this massive concealment was Japan's most feared general. General Tomoyuki Yamashita earned his reputation through brilliance and brutality in equal measure. When he swept through Malaya and captured Singapore in 1942, forcing 100,000 British soldiers to surrender, he did not just win a battle. He shattered the myth of Western invincibility. They called him the Tiger of Malaya, and with good reason. Now, with the Golden Lily treasure trapped in the Philippines, Yamashita received new orders: make it disappear. The Philippines proved ideal for concealment. 7,000 islands, most covered in impenetrable jungle and honeycomb mountains. Yamashita's engineers identified 175 locations suitable for treasure vaults. But these were not simple holes in the ground. The Japanese engineers created sophisticated underground complexes, many connected by tunnel networks. They used forced labor, prisoners of war, and enslaved locals who would never live to tell tales. After the work was complete, the workers were executed on site. Security went beyond murder. Each vault was booby-trapped with devastating ingenuity. Poison gas canisters, false walls leading to flooding chambers, explosives triggered by pressure plates. The engineers designed these tunnels so that entering without precise knowledge meant certain death, and only the engineers possessed that knowledge. They created maps using an ancient Japanese dialect called kanji, thousands of years old and incomprehensible to outsiders. These maps contained no recognizable landmarks, only cryptic symbols representing geographical features. Without the code, the maps were worthless. Then came October 1944. American forces landed in the Philippines, beginning the bloodiest campaign of the Pacific War. Yamashita fought ferociously, but he was buying time, not territory. Gold Lily teams worked frantically, racing to complete the burials before being overrun. Some treasure ships, caught in harbor with nowhere to go, were deliberately scuttled. Their cargo was sent to the ocean floor rather than American hands. The final vault, number 175, was finished in desperate haste near Baguio as American forces closed in. According to legend, Yamashita made one final move to protect the secret. The chief engineers who knew everything, the map codes, the vault locations, and the trap mechanisms, were ordered into that last tunnel to perform final inspections. While they worked, Yamashita ordered the entrance sealed. The engineers became permanent guardians of the treasure they had hidden. When Japan surrendered in August 1945, Yamashita was captured and tried for war crimes. He was convicted and hanged in 1946. Prince Chichibu, the alleged mastermind of the Golden Lily, died of tuberculosis in 1953. Every person who definitively knew where Yamashita's gold lay buried was now dead, or so it seemed. The locksmith's obsession. Roger Roxas was born in 1943, precisely when Yamashita's engineers were burying their secret fortune. He grew up in Baguio, where the general made his last stand and the final vault was sealed with living men inside. Post-war Philippines was devastated. Manila lay in ruins, second only to Warsaw in wartime destruction. Hundreds of thousands were dead. The economy was shattered, families were torn apart. In this landscape of poverty and desperation, stories about buried Japanese treasure were not just entertaining, they represented hope. Roger began searching in his teens. While other young men pursued normal careers, he spent every spare moment and every spare peso on his quest. He scrimped and saved to buy a metal detector, a significant investment for someone of his means. Weekend after weekend, he trudged through the jungle around Baguio, methodically covering ground. Years passed. He found old coins, spent ammunition and discarded equipment, but nothing of value. Friends told him to quit. Family members questioned his sanity. But Roger possessed something beyond optimism. He had conviction. Yamashita had been in Baguio. Logic dictated that treasure must be nearby. Then, in 1961, after years of fruitless searching, Roger obtained something extraordinary: a map. Treasure maps circulated frequently in those days, almost all forgeries sold to gullible hunters. Roger had seen dozens. But this one came from a former Japanese soldier who had served in Baguio during the war's final days. The man claimed to have been part of an engineering unit that buried gold as the Americans advanced. The map was encoded naturally. It had indecipherable symbols and no landmarks. But it confirmed Roger's instinct that there was treasure near Baguio. For years, Roger tried to crack the code. He showed it to scholars and historians and anyone who might help. No breakthrough came. Then came his second breakthrough. Roger met Feli Okubo, a Filipino who had worked as an interpreter for the Japanese during the occupation. He had worked directly for General Yamashita. In the war's final weeks, Okubo witnessed Yamashita personally overseeing the transport of gold-filled wooden boxes to a tunnel near Baguio General Hospital. It was specific, detailed, and matched the general area suggested by Roger's coded map. Now Roger had his target. But Roger wasn't alone in hunting Yamashita's gold. The most powerful man in the Philippines was searching too. Ferdinand Marcos had been elected president in 1965 through a campaign funded by mysterious wealth. Officially a war hero, Marcos was actually a cunning political operator whose promises of reform masked unlimited ambition. Within years, he had begun transforming the Philippines into a dictatorship built on corruption. Marcos loved money with passionate intensity. His wife, Imelda, matched his appetite for luxury, accumulating thousands of shoes and priceless artwork while millions of Filipinos starved. But their lavish lifestyle required constant funding, and Marcos needed more than he could steal from the national treasury alone. Yamashita's gold obsessed him. As president, Marcos possessed advantages Roger could never match. He commanded the military, controlled the police, and had access to code-breaking experts. But despite these resources, Marcos hadn't found anything. So he devised a clever trap. In 1968, Marcos passed a law requiring all treasure hunters to obtain permits, specifying exactly where they intended to dig. On the surface, this seemed reasonable, protecting historical sites, preventing chaos. In reality, it was brilliant manipulation. Thousands of enthusiastic hunters across the Philippines were now working for Marcos. They did the research, identified promising sites, and then reported their findings directly to the government. Marcos simply waited. If anyone found treasure, he would know immediately and could seize it using his presidential power. The system was elegant, ruthless, and completely legal. When Roger applied for his permit in 1970, he had no idea he was painting a target on his back. He believed following the rules would protect him. He thought the government would honor his rights as the discoverer. He was catastrophically wrong. May 1970. Roger assembled a small crew of workers and headed into the jungle near Baguio General Hospital. He had invested his life savings into this final attempt. If he failed, he faced financial ruin. He had a wife and a child on the way. Everything rode on this. The jungle had reclaimed the area completely. 25 years of growth concealed any trace of Japanese activity. Roger and his team hacked through vegetation for 2 weeks before finding what they sought, a partially collapsed cave entrance. They pushed deeper. 100 meters in, they hit a wall of debris. It looked like dynamite damage, exactly what you would expect if the Japanese had sealed a tunnel. Roger's heart raced. This was promising, but clearing the collapse was back-breaking work. The tunnel was hot, airless, and crawling with insects. Rock by rock, bucket by bucket, they excavated. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Roger's money dwindled. His crew grumbled. 4 months of brutal labor had yielded nothing. Then they broke through. In the dim light of their torches, Roger saw skeletons sprawled across the tunnel floor. They wore rotted Japanese military uniforms. Engineers, Roger realized. Sealed alive, just as the legend suggested. This was not just any tunnel. This was a genuine Yamashita vault. Hope renewed, Roger pushed forward. The tunnel branched into a complex network. He explored every passage, checking with his metal detector, examining every chamber. But day after day, he found nothing. 6 months had now passed since he had begun. His savings were completely exhausted. No one would lend him more money. The crew quit. Roger stood alone in that tunnel, financially broken, facing failure after coming so close. Most men would have walked away. Roger made one final sweep with his metal detector, and it buzzed. Behind a false wall, hidden exactly as the Golden Lily's engineers would have concealed it, Roger found a cavity. Inside sat a golden Buddha statue, gleaming in his flashlight beam. It stood about 3 feet tall, Burmese in style. The kind of religious artifact the Japanese had looted from temples across Southeast Asia. Roger stood frozen, unable to process what he was seeing. After a decade of searching, 6 months of grueling excavation, and spending everything he owned, here it was. Proof, vindication, wealth beyond imagination. But the Buddha was only the beginning. Surrounding it were wooden boxes, stacked floor to ceiling. Roger pried one open. Gold bars, row upon row upon row of them. He estimated over 1,000 boxes. Each bar was worth roughly $11,000 in 1970. Roger was looking at tens of millions, possibly hundreds of millions in value. He had found one of Yamashita's 175 vaults. Roger carefully transported the Buddha home, planning to return with trucks for the gold bars. But as he examined the statue more closely, something seemed odd. The weight was wrong. The proportions were strange. He investigated further and made a discovery that defied belief. The Buddha was hollow, packed with diamonds. Roger Roxas, the locksmith from Baguio, had just become one of the wealthiest men in the Philippines. For one glorious night, everything he had dreamed about for 10 years was real. Then the knock came on his door. April 5th, 1971, 2:30 in the morning. Loud pounding shattered the night's silence. Men shouted for Roger to open up. They said 3 minutes, or we will shoot through the door. Midnight visits were feared in Baguio. Roger knew exactly who they were. He had heard stories about these midnight visits. In Marcos's Philippines, people who became inconvenient simply disappeared. The men forced their way inside. They took everything, including the Buddha, Roger's documentation, his photographs, and his maps. They threatened his family, then vanished into the night. Roger sat in his ransacked home, devastated. His entire life's work was stolen in minutes. Most people in his position would have accepted the loss. Fighting Marcos was suicide. The president controlled the courts, the police, the military, everything. Citizens who challenged him ended up in unmarked graves. But Roger was not most people. The next morning, he went to the police and reported the theft. He filed a report that would not be easily ignored. The police, of course, did nothing. They worked for Marcos. But Roger's report triggered unexpected media interest. The story was irresistible. A humble locksmith had found legendary treasure. Mysterious thieves stole it. The thieves were connected to the presidential palace. Newspapers across the Philippines picked up the story, asking pointed questions about President Marcos. The timing could not have been worse for Marcos. He had just won re-election through blatant fraud, claiming a 2 million vote margin that nobody believed. Corruption allegations surrounded him. International observers were questioning his legitimacy. The move was incredibly brave and incredibly reckless. Roger had just publicly humiliated the most dangerous man in the Philippines. He had essentially called the president a liar and a thief in front of the entire nation. Brave and reckless, he stood his ground. The consequences came swiftly. 2 weeks later, men came for Roger again. This time, they did not steal his property. They took him. What happened next, Roger would later testify, constituted systematic torture. Over several days, he was beaten repeatedly. Cigarettes were extinguished on his skin. Electrical shocks were administered. The physical agony was designed to break him completely. Eventually, Roger signed an affidavit stating that Marcos had nothing to do with the theft. He revealed the tunnel's location where the remaining gold bars were hidden. Broken, traumatized, defeated. He gave Marcos everything. The torture left permanent damage. Roger lost sight in his right eye. Beyond the physical scars, something inside him had been shattered. The stubborn, courageous locksmith who had dared challenge a dictator was now a beaten man. Shortly after, Marcos's men cleaned out the tunnel, taking every gold bar Roger had found. For Roger, the nightmare seemed complete. His treasure was gone. His body was broken. His reputation was destroyed. That affidavit made him look like a liar or a fool. He had lost everything, including his marriage, which collapsed under the strain. Most stories would end here, with the powerful victorious and the humble crushed. But Roger's story was not finished. Ferdinand and Imelda Marcos ruled the Philippines for 2 decades, accumulating what some estimated as $10 billion in stolen wealth. They lived in obscene luxury, while their people suffered under martial law, poverty, and repression. Then, in 1986, the Filipino people had enough. The People Power Revolution erupted, with millions taking to the streets demanding the Marcoses step down. Facing inevitable overthrow, Ferdinand and Imelda fled to Hawaii in exile. When citizens stormed the presidential palace, they discovered the extent of the Marcoses' greed. They found rooms full of artwork and antiques, warehouses of designer clothes, and most famously, over 3,000 pairs of Imelda's shoes. But where had all this wealth originated? The Marcos fortune was too vast to explain through ordinary corruption alone. During their later fraud trial, Imelda's lawyers offered an interesting defense. The money, they claimed, came from Yamashita's gold. According to this argument, Ferdinand had found multiple treasure vaults and used that gold to finance their lifestyle and political operations. It was a clever explanation, impossible to disprove and convenient to claim. Whether true or not, the statement confirmed what many Filipinos already believed. Roger Roxas had really found Yamashita's treasure, and Marcos had really stolen it. Roger, living in obscurity with his health ruined and his spirit broken, now had vindication. The entire world knew Marcos was a thief, but knowledge isn't justice. In 1988, Roger filed a lawsuit in Hawaii against the Marcos estate, seeking compensation for the stolen treasure. Then, in 1996, a Hawaiian jury reached a verdict. They believed Roger. They found the Marcos estate liable for theft and awarded Roger Roxas $43 billion in damages, the largest civil judgment in history. Roger never collected a single dollar. The day before he was scheduled to appear in court for the final proceedings, Roger Roxas died. He was only 49 years old. The decade of stress, torture's lasting effects, and the endless legal battle had taken their toll. Yet Roger achieved something perhaps more important than wealth. He proved the treasure was real. He exposed Marcos's theft. He showed that even the most powerful dictator could be challenged by a simple locksmith willing to stand up for truth. History remembers Ferdinand Marcos as a corrupt tyrant who died in exile. History remembers Roger Roxas as the man brave enough to say no to absolute power, even when it cost him everything. The question that haunts treasure hunters is whether Roger's vault was unique. According to legend, Yamashita created 175 burial sites. Roger found one. What about the other 174? People are still searching. Every year, expeditions comb the Philippines, following cryptic maps and coded clues. Some have died in the attempt, either buried alive in cave collapses or killed by accidents while digging. Still, the obsession continues. Yamashita's gold may be the greatest treasure never found. Or perhaps it has been found repeatedly, only to be stolen by those powerful enough to take it and bury the truth along with the gold. The legend endures because, against all odds, sometimes legends turn out to be true.